on behalf of the list to chair the event together with our co-host, Edinburgh University Political Union, and its president, who has gone able.
I know the president.
No, I don't know who's gone able for the moment, who's the guy called Edinburgh. Rather than give my introduction when Sviatlana arrives and she has to sit through it, I thought I would give my introduction now to save a bit of time, since she's obviously running over half an hour late. I'm sure most of you here will be familiar with aspects of the human rights abuses that are happening in Belarus. In August 2020, the claim of another massive presidential victory for Aleksandr Lukashenko could no longer be stomached by most people in Belarus, and they peacefully came to the streets in their thousands. But their peaceful actions were swiftly met with breathtaking cruelty by the Lukashenko regime. Since then, the evidence of human rights abuses continues to grow, and now, over 2 years on, there are 1,324 political prisoners in terrible conditions in prisons, lack of food, no letters, solitary confinement, punishments, and daily humiliations. Women denied basic sanitary protection. These political prisoners include Sviatlana's husband, Sergei Tsikhanouskaya, imprisoned by the regime for 18 years for his social media activity, showing the plight of people in Belarus. The regime has never softened in its brutality, and since February this year, the cooperation of Lukashenko with the illegal invasion of Ukraine by Russia through Belarus territory has only escalated the oppression of any opposition. Students have been imprisoned for social media posts, and their universities have coerced by expelling them from their courses. I'll say a bit more about Sviatlana when she arrives, but as you'll probably be aware, the response by the international community to the events in Belarus was slow, but in May 2021, they were forced to take action after the effective hijacking of a Ryanair flight by the Belarusian regime, so that they could arrest, violently abuse, and imprison the young journalist Roman Protasevich and his girlfriend, and the role of Belarus in Putin's illegal war in Ukraine brings these issues into even sharper focus. When Sviatlana arrives, I will give a brief introduction and invite her to speak to you, but we've structured the event to prioritize questions. So we invite you to join in collective reflection and thinking to engage and discuss what we in EMIS, the Edinburgh Political Union, and wider Scottish civic society can meaningfully do to support our fellow Europeans in Belarus in their struggle for democracy and peace. In particular, their goal to restore constitutional legality and the rule of law, to support traumatized political prisoners now and when they're released, and support the thousands of Belarusians forced to flee their homes. In short, what can we in Scotland and the UK do to support the United Transitional Cabinet established last month under the leadership of Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya? Once you've heard from Sviatlana, my co-chair Ed Roost from Edinburgh University's Political Union will ask her a number of questions that have already been submitted by students, and then we plan to open up the floor more widely for questions from your good selves. We'll then have a brief presentation from Scotland Street Press, who are the publishers of Belarusian literature, and a small presentation by Jo Goodburn, one of our committee members, at the end of the proceedings. Now, I've been given strict instructions that she is to leave on the dot of 7 o'clock. So we've already lost half an hour, but hopefully we will have a bit of time for a discussion. And I'm sure you've all been watching Ms. Tsikhanouskaya on the TV.
It's about 6 minutes away. 7 minutes when I started coming up the stairs.
Okay, no problem.
slides. So I've been involved in all the meetings and things that we've been doing this week. And
Would you like to-
if you want, I can explain all the.
Come and explain a bit of that before you do have a seat, and just before we formally start the event. Apparently, there is no fire alarm testing planned. The toilets, I hope you've found downstairs. The meeting will be recorded, and if you ask a question, you'll find that the microphones are voice activated. But please, could I ask you to introduce yourself so that the microphone picks out your voice and records the question. So that's just a couple of housekeeping points. Okay.
Sorry, just before you start, and just state, if there is a fire alarm goes off, it's through the red door at the bottom of the stairs, and assemble at the top of the stairs that go down to the Victoria Street.
Can't hear you.
If there is a fire alarm goes off, and there's no drill planned, then out the red door at the bottom of the stairs, and that's the emergency door, and round and assemble at the top of the stairs that come up from Victoria Street. It's not a fire.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So I'm Ken McBain. I'm one of the folk who's been involved for a couple of years in Scotland trying to do things following the rigged election and the violence that followed that in Belarus in 2020. We have a production following this in the Scottish Storytelling Centre, and the title that was chosen by the creative director, who had done a number of interviews with a number of Belarusians to find their stories of their involvement in 2020 and the elections. The title that she chose was "The People Woke Up." And that came from a quote from one of the Belarusians who we were interviewing, who's represented in the performance that's going to be later this evening. Because for many Belarusians, 2020, complete turning point in their understanding of their own country and in their understanding of their own president. Aleksandr Lukashenko had been in power for 27 odd years, and there have been protests, there have been marches, there have been attempts for the Belarusian people to fight for democracy and to protest against the ongoing rigged elections, where he has always, amazingly, received about 80% of the vote in all of the presidential elections since he was first elected. But even though there are Belarusians in Scotland today who are exiles from the late 90s because they experienced the violence of Lukashenko and the regime in the late 90s, even though there are Belarusians who are exiles today, 2020 was a massive turning point. There's one interview that I saw of a lady this is maybe in October 2020, where she was being interviewed. She had been imprisoned. She was in one of the most notorious prisons, Viasna. When she was being arrested, she herself wasn't beaten, but she was in cells where there were corridors, where she was listening to men being tortured and seeing men being abused by the security services and the police in the prison. And one phrase that I remember that she said in that interview, it's when she was pleading with some of the police to stop their horrendous treatment. The policeman in the prison said to her, "You don't understand the country you live in." And I think for many Belarusians, that mask has been torn off. Lukashenko has always ruled the country by fear. He has always ruled the country by force. But 2020 was a turning point where more people recognized that that had to change and that they wanted a country which was free. So you will find many Belarusians who are involved. I'm not Belarusian, I'm fortunate enough to be married to one. But Irina, who is here, is similar to many Belarusians. And actually, Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya would say the same, that politics wasn't really an interest. What was going on in Belarus, many people just put up with until 2020. So I'm not going to talk about what Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya is going to talk about, but in Scotland, in 2 years, since that election, since that has brought Belarusians together and other allies and supporters, we have gone from one street protests the arena organised in Princess Street a couple of weeks after the fraudulent election, to then the week after, my wife and I doing a different street protest, because we had no idea there was another one the week before, doing our street protest. And then the week after that, rather bizarrely, so Sviatlana and I went out the street. We had a flag, we had a couple of posters, we just stood for a few hours, we were approached by the police, and that was it. We felt we had to do something to show solidarity with family and friends and the thousands who were standing and protesting in Belarus in much greater danger than we had. I told some folk about it. I told some folk in London that I'd never talked to before and said, oh, we're going to do this. We'll be out next Sunday. The following Sunday, when Sviata and I stood outside the Usher Hall with our flags and just basically stood there, two other Belarusians with a baby walked up and said, oh, we heard about from friends in Belarus that there was a protest going on in Edinburgh this Sunday. So that has just grown and grown and grown, and Belarusians have been involved, and we're now at the point in trying to find ways of Scotland being involved, and Scotland also helping that struggle and that fight for democracy in Belarus, where we have just come from earlier this afternoon from Parliament, meeting with the presiding officer, meeting with the First Minister, meeting with MSPs. But as important as all of that, meeting with you, meeting with students in Edinburgh University, because there are different ways in which we can all help. Yes, Nicola Sturgeon can offer help from the Scottish Government in some ways. But for you, writing a letter to the family of a prisoner can be as significant for that family, and knowing that there is support. I mean, Belarusians have been told for decades that really no one is interested in their country. No one knows about Belarus. No one really even knows where Belarus is. So a week ago, we hosted a Zoom call between Alex Burnett, MSP, and the mother of a prisoner who he has supported. And we had a half-hour call where he was asking about how her son is. Her son is 18 years old. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison for doing basically nothing. He was at a protest. So when we came out of that call, and as we were discussing things in that call, Maxim's mother said, well, there are 10 or 11 other teenagers who are in prison along with her son. They don't have a parliamentarian yet who is supporting them. They don't have a parliamentarian who's phoning their family to ask how things are, or asking questions in Parliament in order to stress. But actually, for those families, we will work on that. We will try and get more parliamentarians. But for those families, even receiving a letter from one of you that we can help with, we can do translations, we will get the message through to Maxim's mother. She will pass that on to the children, to the families. They can then talk to their sons to say that people in Scotland are aware. They know what is going on. So we will pass on some materials. We'll pass on some stuff through Neve. And if you want to help in that way, by even just writing a letter, just something simple, we can do the translations, we can get it to Elena, and she will pass it on to the others. So that's one of the simplest things that you can do, but actually the encouragement that will give a family whose teenage son is in prison for years, the encouragement of that is immense. But we will also be sharing and talking about a few other things that you can do, and Neve will give that. So one of those would be write to your MSP, write to your MP, get them to become what we call godparents, or to adopt a political prisoner as well. The things that is able to do and the contacts that brings is absolutely amazing. So Lord Fowkes, who's mostly Edinburgh based, he also, from the House of Lords, is supporting and adopting a political prisoner called Stepan Latipov. Stepan is one of the highest profile prisoners and has been in prison for more than 2 years, or 2 years now. In May last year, we were writing some letters, and Lord Fowkes was in touch, and we were writing letters to Stepan, and we were getting a letter that we had written between a number of parliamentarians in Westminster, writing that to number 10 Downing Street, and saying to that point to Boris Johnson, this is what's going on in Belarus, and you need to do more. You need to increase sanctions, you need to put more pressure on. We need to work on this so that we're getting rid of Aleksandr Lukashenko. We had drafted that letter, and that had been sent at the weekend. On Tuesday, I think it was, in May last year, Stepan Latipov was in court. He was receiving his trial and sentence. And in court, he tried to commit suicide. Right there in front of his family, in front of the judge and all the others. I saw that on social media, on Telegram, an hour or so after it had happened, and was able to then email Lord Fowkes to say, this is why we need to do stuff. And Lord Fowkes then just forwarded that email to number 10 office to say, this is why we need to do stuff to stop these abuses in Belarus. That was possible because we had linked and had that arrangement between a parliamentarian who has talked to Stepan's aunt, who lives in Wales, who has talked in Parliament so many times about Stepan and highlighted his situation. So another thing that you could do is write to your MP, write to your MSP, ask them to get involved in that as well. And also, as professionals here, a number of you, we will also be talking about ways in which we can help families of political prisoners, how we can help build a new Belarus. Belarus has been under the Soviet Union for decades, then under decades of dictatorship. Belarus needs to be able to look forward to being a country where there is a democratic parliament, where there is a civil service who understands that corruption is not the best way of a country being run. So one of the things that we're discussing with the Scottish Government and Parliament is internships. How can we get people to see lawyers work properly as lawyers? How can we get Belarusians into Scotland to see how social services, care services work? All of the professional things that are important for a country to function well and to be a place of truth and justice are all ways in which we can help Belarus prepare for the day when Lukashenko is gone, when Putin is gone, and there can be democracy and there can be freedom in those countries. But you do not move from decades of communist rule and dictatorship into a better country without us helping in different ways. So those are some of the things that we're going to explore and we will be working on in the coming months. So if there are any of those ways in which you think you can contribute and you can help as well, then let us know. But as I said, we will communicate some stuff to you since you found out about this as well.
Do you have a preferred email address to get in touch?
Yeah, I'll get, so yes, but I'll pass that through Dave. That's probably it. Let me verbally telling you an email address because it's changing as well. So so yeah, we'll, through the communication that you've already had in order to be here, we will give details and ways in which you can help. Okay. I saw one of the team here.
Probably check.
Means, well, I don't know. Let's see the minute.
Not there weren't any shooters around. Thank you, Ken.
I think we'll be able to.
Right. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm not yeah. That's kind of.
Yeah,
It's hard.
yeah, well, because that's I'm very just like it makes things that worry about there's also a big sum of those things. I wouldn't be better.
Yes. Apologies, guys, there is a little delay because of the traffic and obviously with the amount of coordination which has to happen for security reasons. It is like in a bad film, a lot of security involved and police forces coordinating Ms. Tsikhanouskaya's visit here. So that's why they are slightly delayed, but she will be here in a minute. I just wanted to say a few words. Thank you for finding time to be here tonight because, you know, with the war in Ukraine, a lot of efforts, most of our efforts went to support this war. But sadly, we've been saying for 2 years.
Would you like to introduce
Yeah,
yourself?
I will, absolutely. I'll just finish the sentence. We've been saying for 2 years that if the world was prepared to hear about Belarus in 2020, the war in Ukraine wouldn't be that tragic with the forces, Russian forces being based in Belarus, and now Lukashenko agreeing to actually support the war with soldiers marching to Ukraine. My name is Irina McLean and I'm Belarusian who lives in Scotland, who's been living in Scotland for a long time. And I represent People's Consulate of Belarus in Scotland. We are an alternative project agency, if you like, in 25 countries around the world, run by Belarusian diaspora members on voluntary basis. And we are an alternative establishment to tell the world the truth about Belarus, because Belarusian embassies all over the world unfortunately failing to do so, including Embassy of Belarus in London. So tonight is about telling the world, and in this case, telling Scotland about Belarus and why Belarus is so important in this ugly and disgusting game Putin is playing, and why Belarus is like an abused woman who's being told all the time, you're worthless, you're useless, will do anything, and you will not stand up. And that's what's happening in Belarus now. On 24th of February, when the war in Ukraine started, 700 people were arrested in Belarus across the country for just coming out on the street, not even protesting, and carrying a Ukrainian flag, carrying a Belarusian flag, 700 people in one day. Yesterday, 12 people, that's just last stats. Yesterday, 12 people got sentenced. Since 2020, Now the number moved to 12. Originally it was 8 children. And I'm talking children who were the age, they were underage children. So some of them were 16, some of them were 17, got detained and now are sentenced to serve for, what are they serving their sentences for? For not agreeing with the dictatorship, which is run in the middle of Europe, for not agreeing with Lukashenko falsifying the elections for 6 terms, 28 years in power now. And unfortunately, this piece of land is too big to be ignored by Europe. It has been ignored in 2020 when Lukashenko totally exposed himself, and now we see the result.
We've already done most of the introductions. But we're conscious of the fact that you don't have much time. So we want to keep the introductory comment very short, and I will hand over to you shortly. I just wanted to say that you were the presidential candidate who challenged Lukashenko, a primary school teacher and mother of 2 young children, thrust into politics following the imprisonment of your husband, Sergei. Recognized internationally as the winner of that election, Sviatlana has since worked tirelessly for democracy and peace in Belarus. Her quiet leadership shows a deep commitment to serving the people of Belarus. She's received many international awards for her work, including the European Union's Sakharov Prize for Peace in 2020, and recently the Sham Prize for Peace, along with Veronika Zyapkova and Maria Kaleshnikova, who is currently serving an 11-year term in prison. We're honored by your presence here, and we look forward to your comments.
First of all, I'm really grateful to you that you invited me here, to speak about Belarus, what's going on in our country. I don't know, maybe you have heard about Belarus in recent events that Belarus is co-aggressor in the war against Ukraine. But actually, my task now is to tell people what's going on in reality, that Lukashenko, dictator, became collaborant in this war, collaborant to Putin in this war, but Belarusian people are against this. And actually, now Belarusian people are fighting not only against dictator, not only for our free Belarus, for our democratic changes, but also for the for Ukrainian victory, because the fate of Ukraine, fate of Belarus are intertwined, interconnected, interlinked, and without free Ukraine, there will be no free Belarus, but vice versa. While Lukashenko is in power, but keeping his power thanks to violence, Putin's support, there will be no, security, safeness in Ukraine and our neighboring countries. So actually, maybe I would answer the questions because I really don't know what you know about Belarus, what you don't know. Maybe you will tell me how you are supporting the Russian force, if you're supporting it, or maybe after this meeting you will be more engaged. Actually, let's share our views on the situation in Belarus. But anyway, I'm so glad to be here, to see you, and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much indeed. We structured the event so that we already got some information about Belarus, and we're now going to open the floor to questions. The first questions will be put by Edinburgh, who has received a number of questions from students at the University of Edinburgh, and then we'll open the floor more generally to the people here who largely belong to the European movement in Scotland, the Edinburgh Political Union, and some members of the Scotland-Russia Forum.
Fantastic. So, quick by means of introduction, I'm here on behalf of the Edinburgh Political Union, which is the university's political society, and we're super happy to be here. Thank you both the European movement, Scotland, and to yourself for having us here today. My first question is, what time frame do you believe the change over Belarus will be enacted, and what are the key first points that you believe will have to be completely transformed in order to achieve a democratic Belarus?
People say that if you want to make God laugh, tell him about your plans. Actually, in 2020, we prognosed that we will be able to get rid of Lukashenko in a month or two, and we underestimated the cruelty of this regime. We underestimated the cruelty of this repressive machine in our country. So now we are not prognosing anything. We just working. We are uniting society. We are building structures. We are working with our international partners, to when the moment comes, when we feel this moment, that this is the appropriate moment for changes, we will put all our efforts, to get rid of Lukashenko. Because back in 2020, we are not prepared. Our revolution was from heart, it was what people desire, but we have never talked about the surprise, and people went to the streets because they saw unjustful decision of election commission that the election is fraudulent and so on. But now we have to be prepared for this moment. And but actually, our task now is, it's like two-sided approach. On the one hand, it's very important that the pressure on Lukashenko is consistent, that sanctions are imposed, that political pressure is imposed on Lukashenko. Lukashenko is not recognized as legitimate leader of our country. He is not recognized no inside, no outside. So we need this consistency at the moment. On the other hand, we need support to our people, because people to fight with such a propaganda machine, with regime, we need energy, and it's so difficult to keep this energy when you are inside Belarus and you are waiting for the KGB people can come every day to you and detain you. It's constant stress, and people who are in exile also they have to start their life from scratch. You just wrap your children some clothes and leave Belarus, and you don't know how to start your life in foreign country, and moreover people want to return home. So we need to energize people every day, and every act of solidarity, every new assistance to Belarusian media, human rights defending centers, our doctors who had to flee Belarus. All these small steps are very important. It's like, when I had my speech in Edinburgh University, I told that it's like battery. You have to charge this every day with a small amount of energy. So our task is not to be exhausted before Lukashenko is exhausted. So our strategy is to create multiple points of pressure on the regime inside Belarus, outside Belarus, and help to people to be inspired, to have this unity. Because during this 2 years, Lukashenko's regime tried to split Belarusian people many times. He always told, look, those who fled Belarus, they are our enemies. They betrayed our country, and so on. But it's hundreds of thousands of people, and people fled Belarus because they didn't want to be detained. So he always trying, to seed gossips, for us to quarrel with each other. But he failed because Belarusian people, they have aim, we are not competing politically with each other. You know, we just want to destroy this dictatorship, and so it's impossible, you know, to destroy our unit. So we don't have like milestones ahead. You know, we have constant everyday work.
And what role do you believe social media has had in enhancing your profile, both as having to quickly make that transfer from supporting your husband to now being that icon of the democratic movement? What role do you think social media has played in terms of promoting the idea of democracy and spreading the word? And then also on the other side of it, how do you feel the Lukashenko regime has been able to also deploy social media to somewhat counter that?
So actually, media and all social networks played a huge role in 2020, and it continues to play now. In 2020, through Telegram channels, I'm not sure if you use Telegram a lot.
Not too often here.
Not too often, yeah, but it's rather widespread in Belarus, and people could coordinate their actions through Telegram. And actually, regime, we have like old Soviet style pattern of governance. You know, regime didn't pay much attention to development of different networks. People in 2020, you know, used Signal, Telegram. We are not too much involved in Facebook, I suppose, but through this fast chats, people coordinated where to go, how to act, where police is coming, so people, you know, escaped from that place, you know. And at the day of elections, when regime saw how many peaceful people, you know, are coming to the streets demanding honest results, they turned off internet. Without internet, you can't watch YouTube, you can't watch streams on YouTube. The only thing that worked at that day was TikTok.
Sure.
And people immediately catch that, you know, they wrote small videos through TikTok, they could inform each other, and actually regime at that moment they couldn't follow the you know, how people communicated. And now actually all our alternative media are in YouTube, mostly in Telegram, YouTube. We can't use state TV because propaganda is always there. So people got used to the situation when alternative media, honest news are on YouTube channels. And actually, since 2020, all alternative media have been ruined, liquidated in Belarus, but people managed to restore the media in exile. What regime is doing with this, they understand that they can't forbid YouTube, for example, they can't forbid social networks, Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatever. They declare all the alternative media as extremists. So tweets, Instagram channels, YouTube channels, Telegram channels, they выпускают закон.
They introduced a law.
Introduced the law that these channels are extremists, and if, for example, you are detained, you know, person is detained, and they check, of course, their mobiles, and if the person is subscribed or left comment in one of these channels, he could be detained for 10, 15 years in jail. So it's difficult, but people know how to circumvent these restrictions. People know how to use VPN, know how to очищать историю, delete history of watching.
Suppress.
But of course, it's difficult. You are always stressed. You can't normally watch programs you would like to watch. You have to, you're in constant fear. This is like actual Belarusian people now live in the atmosphere of tyranny, of terror. That any moment you can be detained. And actually, almost every person in Belarus has so-called alarm bag wear warm clothes, toilet paper, toothbrush, toothpaste, and you always bring it with you because KGB can come to your work, to your house, to kidnap you on the street. So just not to be without any posing in jail.
And no doubt this is you face an extreme political challenge with achieving democracy. But how has the whole experience been on you personally, being separated from your husband, and what contact have you been able to have with him, and also in regards to your children? How's that been sort of as a family? Because no doubt this is not just a matter for Belarus, but it's extremely personal, no doubt.
Yeah, so first, I have to say that I saw my husband last time in May 2020 when he was detained, and I have never seen him after this, only on propaganda TV where they're shooting him in courts. And the same my children, they hadn't seen their daddy even earlier. So of course it's painful. You're living with this pain every day, and it's not only, of course, my husband is my like personal story. He's like daddy of my children. He's like my personal pain. But simultaneously, you understand that he's not the only one. There are thousands of other people with ruined fates whose children are waiting for mothers or fathers. It forms split, separated families, and all those people are being tortured in jails, being humiliated morally and physically, and it's like constant pain. You can't get used to this pain. You are waking up with these feelings, and you're going to bed with these feelings. But I think that this pain gives you energy to continue your fighting. You understand that those people in prisons, they sacrificed with their freedom, with their lives to give you opportunity to continue. So that's why they're like our regime. We have moral obligation. We have many goals. We have to achieve democratic changes. We have to hold new elections. But our first goal is to release our beloved from jails. So actually, look, every morning, now my husband for 40 days already in punishment cell. I hardly can imagine that you know what punishment cell is. It's like a cement room, 2 to 2 meters. It's maybe smaller than my husband. And there is so-called bed. It's bare iron planks. Can I say so? Yeah, without mattress, without pillow. And this bed is пристегивается к стенке.
It's flush up against the wall.
Yeah, during the day, and person don't have place to sit anywhere, and a person is standing all the day, just standing. When it's night, the temperature inside the cell and outside is the same. Now it's about 6-7 degrees. It's extremely cold. Person, my husband's without warm clothes, so every hour or two he has to wake up during the night, do some exercises and just to warm up and sleep a little bit more. And it's every day. Now it's already 40 days. Just imagine every day you have no normal food, you have no fresh air, you have no shower for weeks. It's like actual humiliation of a person.
Oh.
Yeah, and so every morning you wake up with these thoughts that you can have a cup of coffee, people there can know. And it's like sometimes actually, you are so overstressed and so overtired that you think, look, I can't do this anymore. I want to give up. But you understand that you really can't, because you put yourself on the place of those who are in jail, and how those people feel that every day those who are on freedom fighting for you. So you wake up, go and fight.
I'm going to open up the floor to anyone who has questions from Yes, the gentleman over there. Could you say who you are?
The name's Nigel Bagshaw. I read a Belsa report today of toilet papers being sent out to citizens in, I think it's Belarus. And I wondered if people are called up in Belarus, how will that change the situation? How would you imagine people to respond to a mobilization within Belarus itself?
Actually, of course, we are analyzing the situation. We believe that there cannot be mobilization in Belarus because it could be political suicide of Lukashenko, and he knows this. He knows that Belarusian people are against the war. They are not going, they don't have anti-Ukrainian sentiment. We actually, it's not just simple words. We think that Ukrainians are our brothers and sisters, and we don't want, and our army, our soldiers have the same mood, anti-war moods, and Lukashenko knows this. But we understand that Lukashenko is a puppet of Putin. And if Putin orders him to do so, for mobilization, to to tie him closer, to himself. So maybe Lukashenko can do this, but it would be, I'm not sure about visible protests because just don't forget that people are living 2 years under huge terror, but our partisans group, they would do something for sure. I mean, mobilization would be possible. Mobilization could be connected with bringing more Russian troops on our territory, just to suppress possible uprisings. So it will be very shaky situation for Lukashenko. I really don't know if he will dare to announce mobilization in Belarus, but who knows? There can be many ways how the situation can develop, and our task is to prepare for any development. But actually, there is risk that just in case Putin decides to use a nuclear weapon. Who knows? Of course, we believe that it will not happen, but we are rational people. We want to think rationally. And this nuclear weapon can be deployed in Belarus, and the attack can happen from territory of Belarus. So Putin can use Belarus. So it also should be some reaction. We will see how the world will react on this, but it's all the countries have moral justification, can I say so? To bomb Belarus. It's awful, but actually we don't know what on the minds of these two dictators. But we have to watch closely, and that's why we understand that recently Belarus was overlooked behind the situation in Ukraine, and not all politicians understand the meaning of Belarus in this situation. That's Belarus is like Russian balcony. We have 1,000-kilometer border with the NATO countries, and there can be provocations, along our territory. Everything is so horrible at the moment, and Lukashenko went to Georgia, to Abkhazia, if geography. So it's like sign of loyalty to Putin. And how far Lukashenko can go in this loyalty, that's the question.
Neve?
Last month, you established a united transitional cabinet. Could you talk to us about what support you are getting or need to get internationally to support your cabinet?
Well, first of all, the organization of this cabinet was response to the war in Ukraine. In 2020, I was against any proto-governments, any proto-parliament, because I thought that we could distract our attention from fight inside on building different structures, in exile. I didn't want this because there was feeling that we could return very soon. But when the war has started, we decided to build some proto institute, to proto government. I actually don't like this proto things, but still we have to unite people with different political views, but who have the same aim. It's like our this representative body is like executive institution, to install closer relationship with different institutions. Because if before I was the only one who had mandate, to represent people, but it's so difficult. We have to cover so many countries, we have to cover so many organizations and on different topics. And we have representation on defense, on security, on national revival, on social questions. So I wanted to show that I have team. We actually were collaborating with all the political forces, with all NGOs, but this we have already something. How to say, we have structure, at the moment, and people know where to go when they have question on national identity or on social questions. So, and the cabinet was very well perceptive in Belarus. And now, of course, we ask our political partners, our allies, to recognize this cabinet as transitional cabinet, and also a signal for elite who are still in this regime, that there is another center of power, that you don't have to be loyal, to Lukashenko to serve your country. Because honestly speaking, I'm sure that most of those who are working in the regime or working in military forces, they also want changes in Belarus, because everything now in this regime is built on blackmailing, on fear, on different hooks, like regime has hook on every person in the regime to have opportunity to blackmail, and everybody would like changes, but people don't know how changes would look like, because people got used to live under dictatorship, actually, especially like older generation, post-Soviet people. And we explaining, we actually educating people what democracy is. How nobody is going. No, Lukashenko sent narrative that all these democratic forces, they will hang all of you on the nearest trees, after they come to the power. Of course not. We don't share Belarusians on those who are pro-democratic or pro-regime, but these people have to be humans first of all, and everybody will have his place in this system, in this new democratic system. Of course, those who committed heavy crimes against people, who tortured people, who raped people, our women, men during protests, of course, they have to be brought to justice. It's nobody's ready to appease, those cruelty. But normal like authorities, people of government, who just silently fulfilled their work, they can, if they understand democratic values, if they want these values to blossom in Belarus, they could fulfill their work.
Gentleman over there.
Question to propaganda and watch the Russian propaganda exercise try to influence the Belarusian media. Is there any way to combat it? Because I know a lot of people who are anti-Lukashenko, but because they feed Russian propaganda each time, they just don't think that political activism is worth it. Is there any way to combat the Russian propaganda that actually exists in Belarusian media?
The only way to counter Belarusian or Russian propaganda is to create your own media, or develop existed alternative media, to support different channels of information that exist, to teach people how to deliver messages to Belarus. You can't do anything inside the country. You can't like turn off television. But actually, even for those who are on the places, young generation, then they can communicate with their grandparents who are watching this propaganda TV. Yeah, actually, it's also very useful because we have so many people, especially in villages, who don't know how to use internet. They believe what is said in TV because they got used to this. They always believe to TV, and their relatives, younger relatives, have to explain what's going on. And actually, we are using old methods of spreading information. Our volunteers in Belarus print and self-made newspapers with actual news of the situation in Belarus and Ukraine, and like put in post boxes, people in villages read everything that's in post boxes. So it's also old way, but efficient in our case, to spread information.
I'll take one last question from the lady over there, and then we have to.
And I heard so many words which resonate with your speech. And especially that my colleague, Aleksandr Lukashenko, he is also in prison, and he's a personal enemy of Lukashenko because he was accused in coup d'etat and in attempt to Lukashenko's family. And and he actually confessed his guiltiness. And we understand that it could happen only because of the tortures and situations in which he actually now. But also, I wanted to ask you a question. One more thing that
Please ask the question quickly.
I just want to say that we feel the support of Belarusians, referring to the Belarusian movement. And from one side, we do have some hesitation of brother and sister nations, like Russia now. We experience that brother can come to our country with damage our houses and lives and all this. So what do you think is possible to do with Belarusians who are completely brainwashed inside? Because you can make changes only inside the country, not outside. And also I experienced that on my own family, because I have relatives in Minsk and we do not communicate because they're absolutely pro-Lukashenko. So what to do with these people? How to work with them?
So first of all, about brothers and sisters, actually, I also don't like, to call people brothers and sisters, the same as in Belarus, there was narrative that Russia is our older brother and we are like younger sisters and so on. But actually, as for people, there are really like pro-Ukrainian sentiments among Belarusian people because we have so similar languages. Belarusian language and Ukrainian language are so similar. Russians will never understand when Belarusian and Ukrainian are speaking, and we can understand each other easily. It's a difficult question about brainwashed people. I think that only personal communication can help. Personal communication of those who is respected, for example, in the family. For example, I'm pro-Lukashenko. I think that he's doing wonderful thing, that there is nazism and nationalism in Ukraine. But if there is somebody in his family who can every day consistently tell him what's going on, show real news, turn off television, only this way. One person, young person, told me that every time when he bought to his grandmother this television, not like the old one but big one, and when the news starts, there's an option to turn on YouTube, on this TV, and he turns on democratic news, and she thinks that it's actually fake news. Like he's like fooling you not to be brainwashed by state TV. Of course, it's like tiny example, but actually you only personal communication. These people are like building walls you know, they don't believe, alternative TV. They don't even look for information. It's comfortable for them to think so. They like act as slaves. You know, sometimes we see that people are, happy to live with a dictatorship because you don't have to think. You just fulfilling what you are said, and you are not asking questions. You know, you don't want to pay attention how other people in democratic countries live. You're comfortable in your in your own family, you know, in your own village, and don't want to think about anything. But now we actually ask our people in Belarus to explain every day. Explain. You can argue, you can I don't know, persuade, but don't stop doing this, because these people are really influenced by a state propaganda TV, and we see this.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Scotland Street Press, represented by Jean Findlay, to say a little about the publication of Belarusian literature. Please.
Good evening. It's a great honor to meet you, because we are the only UK publisher of Belarusian who translates in the Belarusian language. And in trying to sell these books, people say to me, where is Belarus? And Belarus is not the most well-known country in the world, but it is the bravest. And as a representative of that brave part, it's a great honor to meet you. We have been publishing books in the Belarusian language since 2016. And literature is a powerful tool. It moves fast and it lasts. And good literature has an enormous voice in the world. So, for example, Bukarevich's Anandaka's Children has just had a 4-page review in the New York Times. And the reviewer doesn't just talk about the book, he talks about everything that's happening in Belarus. Also, with the New York Review of Books and in the hierarchy of reviewings, these are at the top. Many, many people all over the world hear about Bukarevich's view on what's happening in Belarus. And they say that this book is a manifesto for the survival of the Belarusian language and soul. It's also a great feat of translation. It's been translated from 2 languages, Russian and Belarusian, into English and Scots, as a metaphor for the hierarchy of languages and oppression through language. And this is why it seems to be doing so well. But I'm just going to present you with these books.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'll put them in there for you. So it's we're publishing Your Lawyer, Maxim Znak. So he has smuggled a book out of prison, and it went straight to our translator, and it's now being typeset, and we have entered it for the International Booker Prize. For me, it's rather like A Day in the Life of Ivan Desanovich. It is that sort of book. It's Beckettian, and it is very good literature, and very good literature has a powerful effect in the world.
So thank you so much.
And with social media and publishing, we need less funding back than we used to get under the Soviet Union. But all of these mechanisms for communication are extremely important. Now, I'd like to ask Joe Goodburn on behalf of the European Movement in Scotland to thank you for being here and to wish you a farewell. I'll get out of the way.
Thank you so much on behalf of the European Movement and all of us who are here tonight. I think you've shared this strong political urge that you have to help everyone in your country, but also you've shared something very personal about how it's affecting you. And before you arrived this evening, Ken McLean explained to us that one of the things we can do is we can write to the family of the people who are in prison. And I don't know about everyone else, but what went through my mind at that moment was, how would I start that letter? What would I say? And I think from your very personal account of how it affected you, that's given us more of an insight, and I really hope more of a motivation for everyone in this room to pick up a pen and write one of those letters and give those families that little extra bit of energy for their battery that they need to take those small steps that you all need in Belarus. This is a very small Scottish gift, but it includes something for your children and some candles. And I think we'll all be lighting candles for you all and doing what we can from here. Thank you very much for listening.
I wanted to underline the importance of writing letters. You can't even imagine how it's important for political prisoners and their families to know that somebody somewhere in Scotland thinking about them, thinking about their story, that this story is important for them. It will take 10 minutes of your life, but it could make the week for political prisoner, the whole week for family political prisoner. Just make this your habit. I know, once a week, once in 2 weeks, you know, it depends on you to write letter, to put it into box, post box. Yeah, and I think that in couple of days, there will be like small party in one separate family, that they are remembered, that they are important, that they are not forgotten, that they are not forbidden. So thank you for this initiative. And it can be just a couple of lines, you know, not necessary, you know, to write a lot, just words of support would be enough to, you know, to inspire people. Thank you so much.
Maybe. Very much.
Any last announcements that you wish to make?
Stay in the room for a little bit longer if people want to, but obviously I know you all have diaries as well. You to go to this. We'll be milling around for another few minutes.
You know, just 1 minute. I'm chairperson of the Anglo-Belarusian Society in the United Kingdom. We have a homeless group here at Ken who looks after Scottish affairs, so I'm rather in the background. But still moved by the organisation, in particular political society, Edinburgh. I've just got a quick one-liner. If you want to follow up on Belarus, Facebook is maybe getting a bit old-fashioned. So there's plenty there. Anglo-Belarusian Society. There's a library. You just got to call it Belarusian Library. All sorts of ways easily to research. So that means it doesn't need a long speech. It just means the keyword, that few seconds where you're aware. Sometimes people say, well, we just don't know where to find information on Belarus. That's just because people think you can't even find it on the internet, which is crazy. It is all there. And the societies are more and more doing things online. Anybody in this room that wanted to engage in Belarus cultural events, there are online ways of doing it. Our meetings now in London are all hybrid with the Belarusian community that's been there since post-war. So anybody wants to follow up, and we'll have a word with you, Political Society Chairperson later. Thanks for that opportunity. Thank you.
Well, it only really remains for me to thank you all for coming. I hope you found that useful and interesting. And for those of you that are not members of the European movement in Scotland, feel free to join us as we continue.
Student membership is free.
Student membership is free. So thanks very much indeed. Have a good evening.
What about? We'll maybe seeing you tomorrow night. Yeah. So I'm gonna be getting at the pool tomorrow night. What time about, you think you're coming of late afternoon?
Yeah.